Hello there, and thank you for tuning in to see what the world looks like through atheist eyes with Frank Zindler. I'm Frank Zindler from American Atheist Press, and those atheist eyes are my eyes. In today's program, I have the pleasure of a second interview with Amanda Metskas, the executive director of Camp Quest. It's a summer camp for the children of non-religious parents who can't send their children to Boy Scout camp because the Boy Scouts still discriminate against atheists. And even under torture, no loving atheist parent would ship a child off to summer Bible school or Jesus camp. My guest again today, as I said, is Amanda Metskas, the current executive director of Camp Quest. Amanda is going to tell us about the history of Camp Quest and about Edwin and Helen Kagin, the extraordinary couple who founded that wonderful organization. Let's rejoin the conversation. Well, we have once again Amanda Metskas with us for our second program. Amanda, if you missed the first program, Amanda Metskas is the executive director of Camp Quest. In our first program, we learned all about, well, not all, but we learned a lot about what Camp Quest is all about and the quest. And today we want to focus on the founders of Camp Quest, two amazing people. Unfortunately, neither of them is alive anymore, but they were Edwin Kagin and his wife, Helen Smith Kagin. Amanda, tell us once again what QUEST stands for, so that, because this ties in with the characters we're going to talk about.
Sure. QUEST stands for Question, Understand, Explore, Search, Test.
Okay. And that is the operating motto. It's interesting, isn't it? It's an operational motto that Camp Quest has for the children of secular families.
Right.
Well, let's start at the beginning. When did Camp Quest begin? How did it begin? And who were the players involved?
Sure. So Camp Quest had its first camp in 1996. It was at the Bulletsburg Baptist Church camp that they rented in northern Kentucky. And there's a whole saga there.
There were some stories about that, yes. The beer in the cooler or whatever.
Oh, wow, yes. And this was all before my time. I would have been 16 at this time. But Edwin and Helen Kagin and several other members of a local group in Cincinnati called the Free Inquiry Group of Cincinnati and Northern Kentucky noticed this need that, hey, we've got these communities, we've got like a great lectures that adults can come to and things, but for kids there's the Boy Scouts, but the Boy Scouts says that you can't be a good citizen if you don't believe in God.
Right, the Boy Scouts discriminate against atheists.
Right, and Edwin was an Eagle Scout, and so he got this idea, we need a summer camp, and people thought he was nuts. They were like, how are you going to start? That's crazy. The liability and this and that, and he said, we're going to do it this summer.
Yeah.
And so, he and about 6 other people on that organizing team got it going. And for the first 10 years, Edwin and Helen served as the camp directors of Camp Quest. And during that time, it moved from 20 kids in northern Kentucky to Ohio, to launching locations in other parts of the country, because people contacted Edwin and they said, hey, will you come start a camp in Michigan? And he said, well, no, but you can start a camp in Michigan.
May I just
learn the ropes?
May I just interject a bit here? Edwin Kagin was a lawyer, and he was the quintessential Southern lawyer, country lawyer, an incredible eidetic memory. He could quote the entirety of Macbeth from memory, the entirety of Paradise Lost from memory, and just about every poem that I ever learned in school, Edwin still knew it by heart. And Edwin was just a year younger than I, so to retain all of that at advanced ages is amazing.
Yeah. people, you tell stories about Edwin, and he was brilliant, and he was also like almost in some ways like a caricature of himself.
Yes.
Like, larger than life personality. And the first time I met Edwin, it was 2003. It was spring. He had come up to Columbus to meet with August Brunsman.
Mm-hmm.
And August is now my spouse. At the
Yes.
time, August and I had just started dating. We met on online dating. And I found out that August volunteered at this summer camp. And he said, oh, Edwin and Helen are coming through town. They want to meet you. Let's go out to dinner. So we go to the spaghetti warehouse.
Mm-hmm.
And Edwin turns to the waitress and says, do you have possum pot pie? And I mean, anyone who's been out to dinner with Edwin, like, that is a common experience.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he's this brilliant legal mind.
Yeah.
And you're just like, who are you? And so the kids really responded to him at camp because he was always playing a character.
Yes,
He'd come to the campfire dressed in these foreboding hooded robes, and he'd bring out his walking stick, and then he would throw glow sticks at the kids. Kids, do you believe in magic? And everyone's super excited. So he just
I should mention
so much
Edwin also was for quite a few years on the board of directors of American Atheists, and he was our national legal director for quite a few years.
Right. So when Edwin retired from Camp Quest, Edwin and Helen ran Camp Quest for 10 years. And then in 2005, they said, this is going to be our last year. And they actually prepared us pretty well. They did. One of the lessons that I've got to say I learned from Edwin is to not have founder syndrome, to prepare a succession plan. Prepare to step back. Let people know in advance, hey, you're going to have to step up. And so it took a board of 6 of us to fill the shoes that Edwin and Helen had been filling.
Yeah.
But we all, figured out what our roles were going to be. And so we were prepared. And so I have this photo. This is the 10th anniversary photo of Camp Quest.
And we'll fly this so that everybody can see that,
And so, it's neat to see this was Edwin and Helen's last year running camp. And then in the 10 years since, how we've carried on that legacy that they created. So yeah, it's kind of a cool journey to be on. But Edwin, so I go to dinner with him, and so First August warns me, take him with a grain of salt. He's really great. He's a little, he's interesting, and so
that's the way to put it.
We so he turns to me and he goes, well, you're coming to camp, right? And I said, well, I was going to go visit my parents. I was going to go visit my family in Wisconsin that week because Og was going to be gone at camp. And he said, well, your family's around every week. Camp's only 1 week. You're coming to camp. I said, oh, okay, I guess I'm coming to camp. And, the rest is history now. I'm executive director.
Yes. He was very forceful.
Absolutely.
He was what we would call a dominant personality, maybe a domineering personality.
Yes.
He was.
No, there were definitely people who had a difficult time getting along with him.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna do something bold and start something new, you have to be that kind of person, and something that I tell people is I never would have started Camp Quest from scratch. I would have been too scared. It takes somebody who is willing to just take that big risk and have that big vision, and then we can build on that, and we can kind of rein it in where it's a little out there, right? But it takes having that like fearlessness that Edwin had to start something amazing.
Yeah. I often wonder how Helen was able to. I mean, she really never was, in any visible sense, subjected to Edwin. Helen was a doctor. She had an MD. She was an anesthesiologist. She was Canadian. She had some athletic honor. She was an ice skater, was it? Was she?
I think it was swimming.
Oh, swimming. Yes. It was swimming. Yes. From British Columbia?
Saskatchewan.
Saskatchewan. Okay, yeah. Excuse me. How did I get that mixed up? Well, yes, she was I don't think she was in the Olympics, was she? But she was something
I
really.
don't think so, but
very high
quite
level.
talented.
Yeah, extremely. Yeah. But she was, and she wrote a lot herself, but she put up with him, and she knew how to handle him.
Well, that's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
You know, and Edwin would say that the most commonly asked question of Helen was, "How do you put up with Edwin?"
Yeah.
And you know, Helen was probably the most generous person I've ever met.
Yeah.
You know, you'd come over to their house, and there would be food to serve 50 people, and they'd be having 5 people over.
Yeah.
Right? But she was like, "Oh, you know, make sure you have some of this, and oh, do you want to take this pie home? And, oh, you know, are you having enough?" And you know, she was just so welcoming and generous, and you know, that was a way that she and Edwin, in a different personality wise, but they both just brought people in and sort of drew people to them and to this project, and said, "Hey, why not you? You get involved. You can do this."
How did Edwin and Helen divvy up responsibilities and jobs at Camp Quest? I never was quite clear about that.
Sure. So Helen did a lot of the behind the scenes work. So she was handling the registration forms and a lot of that pre-camp planning work. You know, connecting with the parents, making sure that the kids who were flying in were going to get picked up at the airport, that kind of thing. And then at camp, Edwin was the camp director in that traditional camp director way.
Yes.
You know, where he was up in front. He had the bullhorn in the morning, and he would wake you up with the bullhorn. He'd go from cabin to cabin and wake everyone up. And this was his camp hat that he would wear at camp, and he handed this on to me for my director role here. But you know, his kind of country lawyer personality and everything just really played into that camp director kind of persona that he had too. So this is his hat with his Scottish clan pin and the band with crocodile teeth. You know.
Oh, those are crocodile teeth. Oh, okay.
So yeah, he always had interesting gear to show off, and
he had more costumes than
a lot of people have clothes.
Yeah. He had more costumes than ordinary people have clothes. Exactly. And he loved to dress those up. And it's interesting, when he and I did a debaptism ceremony for the first time, he insisted that I wear some kind of robes. And so I don't know what kind of robes they are, actually. I think they were African, maybe, but I'm not certain. But the funny thing is, if you look at the icon for this program, Through Atheist Eyes with Frank Zindler, probably you will see me wearing that robe.
That's awesome.
That Edwin put on me for that debaptism ceremony, and we had a great deal of fun doing that. That was
you know, one of the things that was always really cool about Edwin is he always knew how to have a sense of humor. And if I have his book Baubles of Blasphemy, which is hilarious. You know, it's his collected writings, and he lampoons everything. You know, nothing is exempt from poking and criticism and mocking. But it's in this way that's sort of friendly and funny, and also has this deeper point, right? So debaptism, you know, take a hairdryer and unbaptize you. Well, that's hilarious. But it's also, you know, a lot of people who I've talked to about debaptism, they find it sort of surprisingly meaningful.
Yes.
You know, because they were baptized as a baby without their consent, without their knowledge, and just being able to do something that says, no, I didn't accept that, and that's not who I am, and now as an adult, I'm making my own decision about this. Even if that thing is a silly little kind of mockery of a ritual, it's still a ritual that people have actually found helps them.
Yes, I was quite amazed too. I think Edwin and I did 3, maybe 4 debaptism ceremonies. Some of them quite large. One was in Atlanta, I think, at an American Atheist convention. And I at first was surprised simply by the number of people that wanted to participate in that. But at the fact that I thought, boy, people are really, really getting into this.
Right.
And then in retrospect, I realized what you just said, that it was a meaningful bit of closure or something like this, that,
Right.
okay, this is a fun way, but I now put that behind me and I can go forward without any problems.
Right.
It's,
Yeah, and another thing when you talk about Edwin in costumes, I think of he and Helen wrote a song called "Back in Their Burkas
oh,
Again."
yes, and they performed
And they
that.
performed it, and Edwin and Helen had like 3 burkas, and they would have
Yeah.
people dress in the burkas and sing the
Yes.
song, and it was to the tune of "Back in the Saddle Again."
Yes, yes.
And it's funny, but it's also pointing out, okay, the Taliban comes back to power,
Yes,
and
yes.
women who had been able to step out of these repressive circumstances to some extent, being able to get a little bit more education, leave the house, these kinds of things.
Sure.
Well, now they're back in their burkas again.
Yes, yes.
And that's a really tragic thing that we need to pay attention to, what the consequences of these particular fundamentalist beliefs are on real people. But we can do it in a way that we can also have a little fun at the same time. And so Edwin was always kind of a master at that, and he offended a lot of people too doing that.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
I don't know. What we try to do at camp, for example, is we teach that people deserve respect and ideas have to earn it.
Yeah.
So you can make fun of ideas,
Yes.
but people, just by virtue of their being your fellow human beings, they deserve to be treated with a certain level of dignity.
Right.
And Edwin was that way too.
Yes,
No matter how harsh he could get about certain ideas, he would always welcome you. You needed help, he was there for you.
Exactly.
And that's what really counts.
Yeah. I should mention about Baubles of Blasphemy, though, that this is published by American Atheist Press, and I'm proud to have been the editor and the publisher of this book. And this book is available from American Atheist. If you go to the American Atheist website, www.atheists.org, and you go to the products button, that'll give you all the books, and you can find Baubles of Blasphemy, and you can have your very own copy. And there are a few things that are kind of serious in here, too. It's predominantly satire, I guess, is the thing. But there are a few very serious things. But basically, Edwin was able to make deep and serious points by humor, by means of humor.
Right.
And so. Okay, what else do you have to show us here?
Well, the only other little piece of show and tell I have here is this is the I could not find a 1996 Camp Quest t-shirt, but that's okay. This is a 1998 Camp Quest t-shirt. And Edwin would always, we've changed the design some since then, which would be blasphemy in Edwin's eyes. He gave us very strict instructions about how the t-shirt needed to be and how the logo needed to be. But we have rebelled, which I think he would approve of in a certain way. So it has underneath the words Camp Quest, it has the Morse code for CQ. And
is
so
that what it was? Okay.
he would always at the campfire explain these shirts, and he would talk about how that was the ham radio signal that people would use to ask if anyone was out there who wanted to talk, because it kind of sounds like seek you. So he had all these little things that he would kind of tie in together, and then he had the Roman numerals for the year. So when I picked up this shirt this morning to bring it to record the show, I was like, what year is that? Okay. And then on the back, there was always a theme, and this year it was where there's a mind, there's magic.
Okay.
So that's the canonical, as Edwin would say, Camp Quest t-shirt, and then I'm wearing a heretical Camp Quest t-shirt from 2012 from Camp Quest Northwest.
Well,
So
I think we don't normally talk enough about Helen.
Yeah.
And right. I want to say a few things about Helen myself. I can't remember exactly what year it was that Helen died.
2010.
In 2010. But when Helen died, Edwin, in his true form, decided that we weren't going to have an ordinary memorial. We were going to have a funeral, putting the fun back into funeral. And I was very pleased and honored to be able to take part in that, should we call it a ceremony? What would we call it?
Memorial service?
Memorial service, yes. But
Memorial
anyway,
party?
Yeah. And I wrote, well, I guess we can call it a poem. You might call it doggerel. But anyway, I'd like to read this, and I think this will be flown so that you can see it yourself. A picture of Helen with her pet iguana, and my memorial poem. Helen Smith Kagin. A leprechaun of life was she, who led us to a treasure that the world can't name, a treasure none can measure. Not only did she bring us gold, she also brought the rainbow. She brought us merriment and joy, like sunlight through a window. The sound of questing children's mirth resounds and echoes after her passage through their lives and minds, like memory of laughter. Because our Helen lived, our lives have all been changed forever. We celebrate her loves and life, and will forget her never. Helen Smith Kagin.
Yeah, I was at the memorial
Yes.
when Frank read that, and it was really, I don't know, I think everyone was crying.
Yeah, yeah.
Because she was just such a warm person.
Yes.
And one of the things that was really important to her was that kids could go to Camp Quest even if their parents couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
And so, we had always accepted donations towards we call it the campership fund. It's like scholarship, but it's to camp. And we'd always accepted donations for that, but after Helen died, we named the campership fund in her honor. So it was the Helen Kagin Memorial Campership Fund. And every year we distribute money from Camp Quest nationally to all of the camp locations around the U.S. that they award as financial aid.
How can people contribute to that fund?
So you can go to campquest.org/donate.
Okay.
And you can contribute to it's now the Helen and Edwin Kagin Memorial Campership Fund, because since Edwin passed away, we wanted it to be for both of them. But, that was particularly important to Helen, that this was an experience that was open to children, even if their families had financial need.
Right.
And so all of the local Camp Quest camps raise money for financial aid and camperships so that kids can come at a reduced cost. And, some of our camps, I think of the 1,000 campers that came last summer, I think 18% of them came on at least some amount of financial aid.
Help.
So we're trying to carry on her legacy by being able to meet those needs and not having to turn children away for financial reasons.
Well, as we wrap up this second interview, I think we still need to talk a bit about Edwin.
Yeah.
And maybe what we need to do is explain how Edwin passed the torch.
Sure. Yeah, so Edwin and Helen, worked with Camp Quest for 10 years, and then Edwin wanted to move on to be National Legal Director of American Atheists. That was a big part of his motivation. And he also said, 10 years, that's what we're going to do, and then we're going to find people to carry this on. So he warned us about 2 years early. And August, who's now my spouse, who'd been volunteering at camp since 1999, became the next camp director. We put together a board. Sean Jeffers, who is now actually the chair of the Camp Quest National Board, really spearheaded that effort to figure out what role everyone was going to play and how we were going to keep running camp. And so, he came in 2005. August was the camp director, and Edwin was just kind of camp director emeritus there at camp. And so after that, he was always there to advise us. He would come by and, lead an activity at the campfire, do things like that. But he really let us take things in our own direction. And, there were definitely times when we made choices that weren't what he would have done, like changing the T-shirts. And he was like, okay, this is your show now.
Yeah.
So we, after that, formed a national organization. So originally there was Camp Quest, which incorporated in 2002 after being run under the auspices by the Free Inquiry Group from 1996 to 2002. But that was just the Ohio camp. And then each of the other camps had their own corporation, their own website. There was no real coordination going on. And so by 2006, we had 6 camps, and people didn't even know each other necessarily. So we were like, this is silly. Everyone's out reinventing the wheel. We've got to stop that. So we formed a national board, and we made it up of members of each of the camps. And then we sort of created this joint website, these services that we extend out to the camps, and it really helped us expand while making sure we stayed true to our mission and kept standards of what we want it to mean when someone says Camp Quest. So that's kind of the path we've been on since Edwin and Helen retired, and definitely with Edwin's support. He, you mentioned, he was a lawyer, and he had wanted to do things like service mark the name Camp Quest and have licensing agreements and things where each of the camps agree we're going to do certain things. But in the hustle and bustle of getting camp run, those pieces didn't always get done.
Right.
And so we've been able to kind of take that vision and kind of institutionalize it. So now we have a lot more kind of written standards and things like that carry on the kind of vision that was laid out.
Very good. Well, is there anything else you want to tell us about Edwin before we close this historical discussion?
Oh gosh. I just, I had the real pleasure last spring at the American Atheist Convention to be able to give a little memorial for Edwin, and I wanted people to take away some lessons, and we talked about a lot of those lessons so that people, even who hadn't met Edwin, could kind of have that sense of what working with him was like. And I think we touched on most of them. Have fun. This activism stuff, like, it's really important. But if you're not having fun, like, you're doing it wrong. You got to have some fun. Know when to step back. Leave a legacy. Edwin always said that Camp Quest was going to be his legacy. It was something that was going to continue on long after he and Helen were gone. And Helen said that too. How many people's lives did she save or make better as an anesthesiologist? But what she's going to be remembered for is this work with Camp Quest.
How many people she woke up, not how many she put to sleep.
Right. And so, those were some of the lessons from Edwin and kind of the things that I want people to carry forward, from that legacy and that work that he and Helen did.
Very good. That's very eloquent. Thank you. I guess then, in closing, one more time, reprise the website where people should go to find out about Camp Quest and how to give money.
Absolutely. campquest.org. And you can, the donate link is right there on the front page, but you can also go to campquest.org/donate and support our programs. You can volunteer at camp. I'll do the same thing that Edwin did. Well, you're coming to camp, right?
Okay.
Our adults who come, they say that they have almost as much fun as the kids do. I think the community that the volunteers form at camp really keeps them coming back and keeps them energized.
Well, the one time that I participated in Camp Quest with the summer solstice demonstration, that was, to me, a really wonderful experience, and I wished that I could have done that more frequently, but that was not the case.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Amanda Metskas, for
Frank.
being with us a second time. And again, all of you out there watching this program, I hope that even if you yourself don't have any children, you will contribute some money so that other children who are questing can have some of this fun and gain some of this wonderful experience. And if you do have children, I hope that you will consider sending them to a Camp Quest near you.
Absolutely.
So that's all for now. And thank you again. And maybe, well, I don't know if we'll be doing this in 2020 to see how your vision comes through.
That would be great.
But we'll definitely have to have another program
Absolutely.
before 2020.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you for tuning in to Through Atheist Eyes with Frank Zindler.
Thank you, everybody.
I'm a big fan of being a counselor at Camp Quest because I grew up going to summer camp and I want to provide what I got out of it. I know that Camp Quest is a one-of-a-kind camp here in Minnesota.
Camp Quest is awesome because we can like express ourselves here and be cool.
And the counselors are really cool. They're some of the nicest people you've ever known in your life.
We get to do so much fun stuff, like summer stuff, but with people that you love also. I like Camp Quest.
Camp Quest!
Yay!